I have to set up my technology. Give me a second. Somebody should go to the eye doctor and get some bifocals, but I'm not. I'm in denial. We're going to go to 1 Timothy 5:3. We're back in 1 Timothy again after a rabbit trail. I'm going to pace and step on the church's computer, so after a rabbit trail. 1 Timothy 5, chapter 5, verse 3. Again, we have to remember the context of what 1 Timothy is about. It is the older Paul giving instruction to the younger Timothy on how he is to conduct himself in the ministry. You guys have endured this study rather well. There are places in here where it's kind of tedious because it tends to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Administrative. But here, Paul says to the church, honor widows who are widows indeed. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, they must first learn to practice piety in regard to their own family, and to make some return to their parents, for this is acceptable in the sight of God. Now she who is a widow indeed, who has been left alone, has fixed her hope on God and continues in entreaties and prayers night and day. But she who gives herself to wanton pleasure is dead even while she lives. Prescribe these things as well, so that they may be above reproach. For if anyone does not provide for his own, especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. These are pretty strong words coming from Timothy here. But he begins to set a formula, if you will, for how the church is to deal with widows and orphans. Today I'm going to talk about the church's obligation to giving as opposed to the individual's obligation to giving. Okay? In a nutshell, the church's obligation is for the most vulnerable of its members first, then the community. Widows and orphans, they are the most vulnerable. You could throw into that category foster children, perhaps, latchkey type kids, but within our own family first. Then we deal with the poor within our own church. Then we go outside. Kind of a family first. That's the church's obligation. On an individual basis, we are to give as we see fit. We give to the church as an act of corporate worship. We also give where there is need, wherever there is need. I want to take you to a verse. Matthew 6:19, 20 and 21, and I'm going to parallel it with Luke 12, 32 through 34. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Compare that with Luke's version. He says, fear not, little flock. And this is the English Standard Version. I like this translation of this verse. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What is the meaning of worship? What is the definition of worship? The definition of worship is treasuring God as valuable above everything else. The outer forms of worship are the acts that show how much we treasure God. Therefore, all of life is meant to be worship, because God's said, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it to show how valuable the glory of God is to you. That comes from 1 Corinthians 10:31. Money and things are a big part of life, and God intends them to be a big part of worship, since all of our lives are to be worship. When we go back to the verse in 1 Timothy where it says that those who don't take care of their own have denied the faith and are worse than an unbeliever, why is that? Because they place their own financial gain over their flesh and blood. Likewise, in the church, James talks about when you say to someone, be well, be full, be satisfied, and don't do anything about the problem, you've done nothing but aggravate the problem. So the way that we worship with our money and our possessions is to get them and use them and lose them in a way that shows how much you treasure God, not money. That's what the text in Luke and Matthew is about. The essence of worship, again, is treasuring. God is infinitely valuable. Now we have corporate worship that happens here at 9:30 in Sunday school, at 11:30, or 11 o'clock, sometimes 11:30 because the pastor's late, but 11 o'clock. There's a place for this. And what we do here on Sunday morning. And the same definitions hold here as everywhere else. The essence of worship here is the inner treasuring of God as infinitely valuable. And the forms of worship are the acts that express this inner treasuring of God. Preaching, hearing the word, praying, singing, sharing the Lord's Supper. One of the acts of our corporate worship is giving, tithing, the offering, whatever you want to call it. It's usually right in the middle of the service where we worship with our money by putting it out of our hands and into the hands of the mission and the ministry. When someone refuses to take care of their family member, they do so based on their own selfishness. It's their time, their money, their space. Now I get it if the person has so many physical health concerns, you got to put them in a home, but even there, you take care of them. You don't put them there or leave them there. You go in and you visit them. You make sure their bills get paid. That's our family obligation. Our church family obligation. We make sure that no one in our church goes hungry. We make sure that no one in our church wants for things. However, if the church has to help someone, then at that point, the church has the obligation to minister to those they help. And to say, okay, look, we'll help you out. Let's set a budget. Let's do some things. Whatever it is to help. I mean, if you build my house. Let's say, I don't have a place to live. I find a chunk of ground and I ask the church to come in and help me build the house. You all get some say-so in the building of the house. Okay? Don't overspend here. Don't do this, don't do this, do this. You all get some input in it because it's a family deal. Okay? It's your sweat and my sweat to build the house. Likewise, if the church takes on a widow, the church is under obligation to monitor her to make sure that she is not all the things that Paul is talking about here. And he goes on to explain. He says, widows who are under 60, get married. Don't be a burden on the church. Go get married. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but if you're over 60, you have nobody, you have no family, you have no money, the church is obligated to take care of you. If she is a woman who is faithful. She was faithful to her husband, and that doesn't mean she was married to one guy. It doesn't cover divorce and remarriage. But that she was a one-woman man, and that's the phrase that he uses later on. She was a one-woman man. But when we go back to this worse than an unbeliever, it's because of the love of money. This is something that we have to ferret out of our church and out of ourselves. The love of money. Later in 1 Timothy, it will tell us the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay? Not money is the root of all evil. The love of money. How do we love money? Our time, our attention, our energy are all put toward it. I want to go back to this verse. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. If you are born again, you have no need. The kingdom of heaven is yours. James tells us, you have not because you ask not. You have not because you ask amiss to spend it on your own pleasure. If you took and chucked everything that you had, like Jesus said to the rich young ruler, sell all you have, give it to the poor, and go and follow me. That is a radical concept. Christians in America, what would happen if the Lord showed up today and looked at all of us in our material wealth that all of us have by comparison to the third world and said to you, you take everything that you have, sell it, give that money to the poor, and you come follow me? I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. What I'm saying is, what if? There's a fork in the road here. Because having been a business owner most of my life, I have come to realize that whatever you own begins to own you. The house needs maintenance. The trucks need maintenance. You have to find jobs for the equipment. The cows have to be fed. The sheep have to be fed. You have to be there every day. My older brother used to say, yeah, owning a milk cow is like being in a bad marriage. You have to be there every day whether you want to be there or not. Or a bad marriage is like having a milk cow. I don't remember how he phrased that, but either way. The deal is, whatever you own begins to own you. What if we lived unafraid? What if we lived without fear of not having our stuff? I know people, they gotta have their stuff. You take them out of their stuff, they lose their minds. What if you took that stuff and you threw it down? Said, Lord, I lay this at your feet. It's just stuff. I just lay this at your feet. Use it however you want to use it. You want me to sell this and give it to the poor? I'm your guy. You want me to keep it and maintain it? Okay. The Apostle Paul tells us that we work so that we can give. That's a radical concept. We don't work so that we can save. Treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, or somebody else will spend it. We work so that we have money to give. Yeah, we have to meet our own needs. Or do we? Do we really? Or is our Father who is in heaven adequate to provide for us? These are questions we have to wrestle with. I could keep you here till 1 o'clock. I have enough material written here to keep you till 1 o'clock. Want to stay or you want to go? Noon whistle causes a Pavlovian response all of a sudden. I'm hungry. And salivating. We will continue on with this little sermon. It's a subject that we need to examine as Christians. I don't condemn because I have been this guy. Busy, 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 busy. With everything but the work of the Lord. This young man here used to work for me when I did firewood. How many loads of firewood did we haul out of there?
Probably about 5-6 loads a day at the slowest.
Yeah. Once firewood season hit, we were hitting 5 or 6 cords a day. Gone, delivered. When it was all done, I didn't have anything more, but I'd gotten a little older. Had some experience, met some nice people, but ultimately, and it had no eternal value. Well, except for the times when I got to talk to people about Christ. But otherwise, it had no eternal value. Yeah, I just bought myself a job. When I inherited a ranch, I inherited a job. When I started logging, I bought myself a job. What do you want to do with your time, your effort, your energy? And your money? Do you want to lay it at the Father's feet and build up a storehouse of treasure in heaven? Because if I had been born living in a tent and spent my whole life living in a tent in the United States, That's that much of a blip on the eternal radar. I can't even hold my fingers that close together. When we look at eternity and the treasure we will spend in eternity as opposed to the treasure that we will spend here, whatever we can make here pales in comparison. We have to remember that we have a Father who, what do we give that we haven't been given? Doesn't God provide for all of us? He goes like this, we go like this. And we can keep a little for ourselves. We can enjoy the things that He's provided for us. But let us not forget that we don't worship the things that He's provided. Let's not be consumed mentally and physically by the things He provides, but let us be consumed instead with the Spirit of God. Let's pray. Father, we come before You and we thank You and we praise You for everything You do through us and for us. Let us remember who provides for us. Let us remember who is sovereign, who is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who is our Father,